Welcome to the pre-application information session for the fiscal year 2022 grants to prevent and respond to domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, and sex trafficking against children and youth program, also referred to as the CY program. The Office on Violence Against Women, also referred to as OVW, is hosting this webinar to assist applicants in understanding the requirements of the FY22 Children and Youth Solicitation. My name is Kelly Green, and I am the program specialist assigned to the CY program. The purpose of the pre-application information session is to highlight a few key points in the solicitation. However, it is not the intent, nor is there sufficient time to go over every aspect of the solicitation. All applicants are responsible for reading the FY22 CY solicitation and the OVW Solicitation Companion Guide to ensure a complete application is submitted. Before we get started, you may find it helpful to have the CY solicitation in front of you for a point of reference during this information session. Please note that the CY solicitation is one of two solicitations issued under the Consolidated Youth and Engaging Men Grant Program, also referred to as the CY-EM program. The other solicitation is focused on engaging men and boys as allies in the prevention of violence against women and girls. This information session focuses solely on the children and youth solicitation. If you are interested in submitting an application for engaging men and boys, please view the information session specifically for that solicitation. One of the biggest changes to the submission process this year is the time that the applications must be submitted by on the due date. Applications are due by 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Monday, April 11th, 2022. OVW will not accept late submissions except under limited circumstances as described in the OVW policy on late submissions, other submission requirements section of the solicitation, which is pages 22 and 23. In addition to the application due date, there are other important steps and deadlines that affect your ability to submit an application. First, every applicant must obtain a Data Universal Number System number, commonly known as a DUNS number, and register online with the Systems for Award Management, commonly known as SAM, and grants.gov. Obtaining a DUNS number and the registration process can take several days and must be completed before applicants are eligible to submit an application in JISC grants. For this reason, OVW strongly encourages applicants to start this process as early as possible. We have provided some dates to assist you with the planning. Apply for your DUNS number by March 14th of 2022. Register with SAM by the same date, March 14th, 2022. And you must register with grants.gov by April 6th, 2022. This will ensure that you're able to submit your application no later than 9 p.m. on April 11th, 2022. Every year, applications are rejected during the submission process because the applicant's DUNS number and/or registration with SAM have expired, or the applicant did not begin the registration process early enough. At the conclusion of this webinar, it is recommended that you start this process if you have not already done so. Applicants that currently have a DUNS number and are registered with SAM and grants.gov should check that their status within those systems to ensure that they are current and have not expired. It is highly recommended that you read over the submission process beginning on page 20 of the solicitation. Applicants are strongly encouraged to review the entire solicitation, including the links, as early as possible to ensure you allow sufficient time to not only prepare the application, but to also complete the submission process by April 11th. When ready to apply, applicants may find this funding opportunity on grants.gov using the CFDA number 16.888, the grants.gov opportunity number, which is O-OVW-2022-171-171-033, or the title of the solicitation, all of which can be found on the cover page of the solicitation. The FY 2022 application submission process is a multi-step process and involves multiple systems. Application materials will be submitted in grants.gov and JustGrants. We strongly encourage starting the application process as early as possible to allow time to learn the system and the process. To begin the submission process, applicants will first submit the application for federal assistance, otherwise known as the SF-424, and the disclosure of lobbying activities, otherwise known as SF-LLL, forms in grants.gov. After submitting these forms in grants.gov, the applicant will receive an email notification from the Justice Grants system, JustGrants, which is the grant management system, to complete the remainder of the application in JustGrants. If the applicant is a new user in JustGrants, the email will include instructions on registering with JustGrants. Remember, you will not be able to submit an application until you have obtained a DUNS number, are registered with SAM and grants.gov, and have submitted the SF-424 and SF-LLL in grants.gov. These steps must be done before JustGrants will generate an email for you to complete and submit your CY application in JustGrants. If you have applied for OVW funding in previous years, you will notice significant changes in the application process. In the new JustGrants system, applicants will directly enter some portions of the application in text boxes, fill out web-based forms for other portions of the application, and upload documents as attachments. The following major elements of the application are examples of how applicants will submit information in JustGrants. The data requested with application, also known as the DRA, is now a survey completed in JustGrants. The proposal abstract will be entered in a text box. The proposal narrative will be uploaded as an attachment. The budget worksheet and budget narrative will be entered into a web-based form. Attachments will not be accepted for the budget and budget narrative, so be certain to fill out the web-based form. And the memorandum of understanding will be uploaded as an attachment. In addition to these major elements, other documentation will be required for all applications or when applicable. Read the CY solicitation carefully for a full description of all required items for the CY program. Additional information related to the submission process can be found on pages 20 through 22 of the solicitation. JustGrants has developed tools to assist applicants with submitting an application. To access these tools, visit the JustGrants website at https://justicegrants.usdoj.gov/. Click on the training tab and choose application submission from the drop-down box, and all of the tools will be there to assist you. The grant award period is for 36 months, tentatively beginning on October 1st, 2022, and ending on September 30th, 2025. Applicants should submit applications with project activities and budgets that reflect this period. Applicants may request up to $500,000. OVW anticipates notifying all applicants of funding decisions by October 1st of 2022. See page 7 of the solicitation for more information. Both new and continuation applications are accepted. New applications are those that have never received funding under the Consolidated Grant Program to address children and youth experiencing domestic and sexual assault and engage men and boys as allies, or whose funding under the CYEM program expired on or before April 11th, 2021. Continuation applications are those that have an existing or recently closed CYEM grant after April 11th of 2021. Applicants may apply to both the CY and EM solicitations. Current grantees with 50% or more of unobligated funds remaining as of March 31st, 2022 may not be considered for funding, or if selected for funding, may receive a reduced amount of funding in FY22 and or a shorter award period. See page 9 of the solicitation for more information. Eligibility is mentioned on the cover of the solicitation, as well as on pages 11 and 12. Eligible applicants are nonprofits, non-governmental entities, tribal organizations, Indian tribal governments, units of local government, and agencies of a unit of local government. Foreign entities and programs and institutions of higher education are not eligible for funding under the CY program. Recipients and partners and subrecipients of CYEM funding in fiscal year 20 or fiscal year 21 are not eligible to apply as the lead applicant or as a partner or subrecipient on an FY22 CY application. Applications submitted by ineligible entities or that do not meet the program requirements may not be considered for funding. Now that we've covered the process for submitting an application and reviewed the types of applications that can be submitted and the eligibility requirements, let's jump in developing your proposed project. Each year, OVW identifies specific topics or issues related to domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking that the office will focus attention. Applicants may choose to incorporate one or more of the priority areas into their proposal. Applicants proposing projects to address a priority area may be given special consideration during the recommendation process. What that means is that OVW has the discretion to recommend a lower scoring application for funding if it meaningfully addresses one or more of the priority areas. Please note, applicants are not required to address a priority area. It is optional. A common mistake that we see in applications that claim to address a priority area is that they do not include all of the requirements of the priority area in the proposal narrative, which results in a lower score during peer review. So if you do choose to include one or more of the priority areas in your proposed project, be certain you have reviewed the requirements for each and that your proposal narrative and budget clearly include activities and strategies to fully address the specific priority area. This year, the OVW priority areas are advance racial equity as an essential component of ending sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, stalking, and sex trafficking. To qualify for this purpose area, applicants must partner with culturally specific community-based organizations or programs, if not the applicant, and include project activities that specifically engage, promote, and serve culturally specific communities. The next OVW priority area is expand economic justice and financial advocacy for survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, stalking, and sex trafficking, including as a tool for violence prevention. To qualify for this purpose area, applicants must partner with community-based organizations or programs, if not the applicant, that provide wraparound services to improve the economic and financial status of non-abusing caretakers and or homeless and emancipated youth victims of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, and sex trafficking. And the third priority area is improve outreach services, civil and criminal justice responses, prevention, and support for survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, stalking, and sex trafficking. To qualify for this purpose area, applicants must partner with and meaningfully compensate population-specific organizations or programs, again, if not the applicant, that are by and for the underserved community that the project will be serving. Compensation for the partners must be at least 10% or more of the requested funding and provide for salaries, travel, training, and staff development, and general operating expenses such as rent, utilities, supplies, business insurance, and financial audits. Please refer to pages 5 and 6 for more information, including the definition of culturally specific and population-specific organizations. To close out this section, I just want to reiterate that you should not state that you will address a priority area thinking it will give you additional consideration for funding unless your proposed project meaningfully supports that priority area. It can actually hurt your overall score by causing you to lose valuable points if you do not include enough information in your proposal narrative to convey exactly how you will address this priority area in your project. Remember, points may be deducted during peer review and or during programmatic review if the applicant states on the data requested with application survey that a specific priority area will be addressed and the proposal narrative, budget and budget narrative, and MOU do not include sufficient activities and/or information to support that priority area. Next, let us shift our focus to the CY program. The CY program supports comprehensive community-based efforts to develop or expand prevention, intervention, treatment, and response strategies to address the needs of children and youth impacted by domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, and sex trafficking. The CY program serves children and youth ages 0 to 24 and their non-offending caretaker. Within the CY program, there are 3 purpose areas which the applicants must choose one to focus their work. The purpose areas for the CY program can be found on page 5 of the solicitation. Please note that applicants may select only one purpose area. Selecting more than one purpose area may result in a lower scored application. The activities described in the proposal narrative and the budget should be reflective of the selected purpose area. In addition, each purpose area includes a range of ages for the children and youth to be served through the proposed project. Applicants should identify the specific ages within that age range that the proposal will address. Funds under the CY program may be used to address only one of the purpose areas listed below. Purpose Area 1, services and training to address children exposed to domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, and sex trafficking. This works with children between the ages of 0 and 10. Purpose Area 2, creating safer communities for youth, prevention, intervention, treatment, and response services for youth impacted by domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, and sex trafficking. This purpose area works with youth ages 11 to 24. And finally, the third purpose area is providing school-based services, prevention, intervention, and response to dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, and sex trafficking. And this purpose area works with children and youth within the ages of 5 to 19. So before moving on, I want to reiterate a few important points and provide you with a few helpful hints to assist you in submitting a strong application. First, as I've mentioned previously, applicants are limited to applying for only one purpose area. Selecting more than one purpose area may lead to point deductions during the peer review or programmatic review process. Because each purpose area has distinct requirements, it is difficult for peer reviewers to determine exactly what an applicant is proposing when they identify more than one purpose area. The strongest applications follow this requirement and select only one purpose area. Now, this does not mean that you cannot add activities to your project, so long as you fully address all the requirements for the purpose area that you are choosing to address. In fact, applicants should feel free to add activities in addition to the program requirements, so long as they are allowable within the scope of this program and do not undermine victim safety. Next, be sure to identify the specific ages within the age group that your project will serve. I cannot stress how important it is to do this. Every year, applicants lose points during the peer review process because they've stated that they will serve the entire age range for the specific purpose area, but then the project narrative only supports a very specific age group. Whichever age range or specific ages that you state will be served, the proposed project must include staff and activities to demonstrate the proper education and skill set to serve those designated ages. For example, Purpose Area 2 can serve youth ages 11 to 24. Because of the distinct differences in youth development, the type of skills necessary to serve and engage with an 11-year-old are very different from serving and engaging with a 17 or 20-year-old. Therefore, applicants are encouraged to focus on a specific age group within the listed range. So an applicant may select Purpose Area 2 and choose to focus the proposed project on serving engaging youth within the ages of 15 to 18. Be sure that your application addresses victim services, prevention education, and training. Each of the purpose areas requires activities to support these services. Applicants cannot do just prevention work without also providing victim services and training, and vice versa. Lastly, while each purpose area is focused on a specific age range, they are also focused on specific types of services. Purpose Area 1 is focused on children who have been exposed to violence. Purpose Area 2 is focused on youth exposed to or who are victims of the VAWA crimes. And Purpose Area 3 is focused on assisting schools and school districts with developing policies and practices to address dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, and sex trafficking of students in a school setting. When deciding on which purpose area to apply, think about the focus of the activities. For example, if you provide prevention education to students in schools, but do not want to assist in policy development at the school level or within the school district addressing the VAWA crimes, then you should apply for Purpose Area 2. Another example is if you want to provide services to school-age children and youth that have been exposed to domestic violence within their homes, but again, will not be developing policies within a school or a school district, you should apply for Purpose Area 1 or 2, depending on the ages of the children you will serve. Next, I'm going to discuss the required partnerships. Applicants and partners are limited to meeting or fulfilling only one partnership category or role. I'm going to repeat that because it's always something that is very confusing for applicants every year. So applicants and partners are only limited to serving as the agency or organization to meet a specific partnership requirement in only one category or role. This means that every applicant must have at least one partner as outlined in the solicitation for the specific purpose area addressed in the project. Applications that fail to include the required partnerships will be removed from the review process. So for Purpose Area 1, the applicant would need to partner with a victim service provider, if not the applicant, with a demonstrated primary purpose of providing direct victim services for children who are victims of and or exposed to domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or sex trafficking, or a demonstrated primary purpose of serving adult victims of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or sex trafficking, but has a designated program that provides direct victim services to children who are the victims of or exposed to the previously mentioned crimes. And then if they also must partner with a community-based organization with demonstrated expertise in developing or providing specialized programming or services to the children, if that is not the applicant. The required partnerships for Purpose Area 2 are a victim service provider, if not the applicant, with a demonstrated primary purpose of providing direct victim services for youth who are victims of and or exposed to domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or sex trafficking, or with a demonstrated primary purpose of serving adult victims of the previously mentioned crimes, but that has a designated program that provides direct victim services to youth. And also a community-based organization with demonstrated expertise in developing or providing specialized programming or services to youth, again, if not the applicant. And the required partnerships for Purpose Area 3 are a victim service provider, if not the applicant, again, with the same criteria as before, a demonstrated primary purpose of providing direct victim services, or with a program within an adult program that serves children or youth. And then they also must partner with a school or a school district. So in those three purpose areas, we referenced a victim service provider in every single one of them. So you can refer to page 13 for the full definition of a victim service provider, which is basically to qualify as a victim service provider, the victim service provider must provide direct victim services to victims of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or sex trafficking. These services must be one of the primary purposes for which the organization exists. Examples of direct victim services include victim advocacy, medical and court accompaniment, short or long-term counseling specifically focused on the previously mentioned crimes, and maintaining a hotline for one of the previously listed crimes. Examples of victim service providers are domestic violence shelters, rape crisis centers, child advocacy centers, and family justice centers. Before moving on to the next section, I want to discuss the importance of partnerships. First, one of the requirements of the CY program is the development of a coordinated community response, also known as a CCR. Because of this, applicants are encouraged to have more than the required partnerships that I just went over. Second, other than the victim service provider, it is not a requirement of this program that the applicant or the partners have experience or expertise in working with children and youth who have been victims of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or sex trafficking. This is why a victim service provider is a required partner for each of the purpose areas if the victim service provider is not the applicant. Each of the partners should bring the specific skills and knowledge necessary to support the overall successful development and implementation of the proposed project. When determining whom to partner with, applicants should take into consideration the specific ages and developmental stages of the children and youth to be served, the culturally specific and underserved populations to be served, and the various professionals required to be trained, and the individuals required to be provided with prevention education. You want to establish a strong CCR to successfully implement and support the overall success of the proposed project. Two examples of what the required partnerships may look like are, first, a victim service provider is submitting an application addressing Purpose Area 2. The proposed project will serve homeless and runaway youth ages 13 to 18. The required partners for this project will be a community-based organization that provides housing and support services to homeless and runaway youth. The community-based organization is not a victim service provider, but they possess the expertise necessary in understanding and meeting the needs of homeless youth. The second example is a community-based organization that provides after-school programming for children from low-income families and is submitting an application to address Purpose Area 1. The proposed project will serve children ages 5 to 10. Because the community-based organization is not a victim service provider, they must partner with a victim service provider that provides direct victim services to children, either as a standalone organization or as an adult victim service provider with a specific program that serves children. Next, I'm going to review some of the mandatory program requirements for all applications. Applicants that receive funding under the CY program are required to engage in and provide specific activities throughout the award period. I'm going to highlight just a few. The full list of mandatory program requirements is on pages 9 to 11 of the solicitation. Please read these carefully and make sure your proposed project includes each of the mandatory requirements. Failure to address each of the mandatory requirements in the project narrative may result in a deduction of points during the peer review and/or programmatic review process. Regardless of the purpose area, all applicants that receive funding will be required to do the following. Participate in OVW-sponsored training and technical assistance, including new grantee orientation. All grantees must participate in the technical assistance events and activities that are organized and supported by the CY program designated technical assistance providers. This includes, but is not limited to, monthly and/or quarterly conference and telephone calls, site visits, in-person training institutes, peer-to-peer learning opportunities, and web-based trainings. Applicants are required to set aside $30,000 to $35,000 of their total budgets for this requirement. I will go over this in more detail in the budget section. Next, create or expand a coordinated community response to develop and guide the proposed project. The CCR team must meet regularly and be representative of the community to be served through the project. All projects must provide crisis intervention for participants at all educational, outreach, and training events. The person that provides the crisis intervention must not be the facilitator. This person must be available to all participants if they are triggered or wish to speak with someone during the event, not just after the event. The person providing this service must be trained in crisis intervention per the organization or state licensing or training requirements. All funded projects have an initial planning phase prior to implementing the full scope of the proposed project. The planning phase is approximately 6 months for new grantees and 3 months for continuation grantees. During the planning phase, grantees will be conducting a community needs and strengths assessment specific to the proposed project and design a strategic plan for implementation of the project. All proposed projects must include the provision of direct victim services to children and youth and support services to non-offending parents or caregivers. I encourage you to review the mandatory requirements on pages 9 to 11 for the specific purpose area your project will address. In addition to the mandatory program requirements for all applications, regardless of the purpose area, each purpose area also has a set of mandatory program requirements. I'm not going to go over each one. Instead, I'm going to highlight just a few. For Purpose Area 1, the proposed projects must include training to assist law enforcement and other allied professionals to appropriately respond to and support children that have been exposed to domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, and sex trafficking. The next is that they must develop processes and training for organizations and/or programs that serve children, such as Head Start, after-school programs, teachers, foster care, and child care to identify children and/or families that are experiencing domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or sex trafficking. It is important for these types of organizations and programs to recognize the signs of violence and to be able to intervene in a healthy, safe, and appropriate manner in order for the child and/or the family to receive support services. Last, projects are required to include prevention programming for children, including those who are at high risk for victimization or perpetration. As in the previous purpose area, I'm not going to go over each one, but we'll highlight just a few for Purpose Area 2. The first is training to assist law enforcement and other allied professionals in responding to and supporting youth victims of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, and sex trafficking. It is important for law enforcement, prosecutors, courts, healthcare providers, and others to understand the special needs and choices of youth who have experienced these crimes. Another one I'd like to highlight is prevention programming for youth that is inclusive of youth-led strategies to assist youth in understanding and recognizing domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, and sex trafficking. It's important to include youth in the development and implementation of prevention programming, bystander intervention strategies, and service delivery to ensure the programming and services resonate with youth. And the same for Purpose Area 3. I'm not going to go over each one, but we'll just highlight a few. So applicants that are funded under Purpose Area 3 are required to develop and implement school-based policies, practices, and programs to prevent and respond to dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, and sex trafficking of students. This includes addressing safety planning, referrals for support services, protection orders, and interim school-based accommodations. It is important to note that if you will not be developing or revising school-based policy, practices, or programs, you should not apply under this purpose area. Every year, several applications lose significant points for applying under this purpose area and not including any information about the development or revision of school-based policies addressing the violent crimes. A requirement for this purpose area is to provide training for school-based staff and faculty, such as school resource officers, teachers, coaches, nurses, counselors, and administrators on creating trauma-informed educational environments and programming for students. In addition, the proposed project should also include training for law enforcement and other allied professionals to assist in investigating and prosecuting incidences of dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, and sex trafficking of students when the students choose to report to law enforcement. Lastly, implement programming within the school or the school district to change the attitudes and the behaviors of the students and the school staff and faculty related to dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, and sex trafficking. Before moving to the next section, it is important to note that all of the activities listed under each purpose area and priority area, if applicable, are required. However, applicants may add additional activities beyond what is required. For example, a community nonprofit proposes a project that addresses Purpose Area 2, which is focused on the community at large. This nonprofit enjoys a great relationship with their local high school. They would like to develop a prevention education curriculum for the students, as well as a curriculum on trauma-informed classrooms for the teachers. Should they state in their application that they are addressing Purpose Area 2 and 3? The answer is no. And why? It's because the applicants to the CY program may only address one purpose area. Second, the proposed project does not meet all of the requirements for Purpose Area 3, which includes the development of policies. And so these two activities would be additional activities for Purpose Area 2. Please refer to the solicitation beginning on page 13 for specific information related to the content and form of application submission. All applications must include the following three components: a proposal narrative, a budget detail worksheet and narrative, and a memorandum of understanding. Applications that do not include these three components will be considered substantially incomplete and will not be considered for funding. Each of these components will be scored during peer review. The proposal narrative consists of three sections: the purpose of proposal, what will be done, and who will implement. All combined, the proposal narrative is worth a total of 60 points and is the bulk of the application. This is where applicants provide detailed information related to the proposed project. Before I get into each section of the proposal narrative, it is important to discuss the page limit. It's imperative that you are mindful of the formatting and the number of allowable pages. You can see pages 13 and 14 of the solicitation for these specific requirements. Peer reviewers are instructed to stop reading and scoring this section at the page number cutoff. You do not want to lose valuable points due to going over the page limit or not following the formatting requirements. Each year, I have seen excellent applications fall below the funding cutoff score for not adhering to the formatting requirements. With that said, the project narrative should be no more than 20 pages, double-spaced. The type should be no smaller than 12 point, and you should be using Times New Roman or Arial font and include page numbers. The first section of the proposal narrative is the purpose of the proposal, which is worth 10 points. This section describes the need for the project and helps reviewers understand your community. Common mistakes include providing too much information that is not relevant to the proposed project, or not enough information to be responsive to what is being asked. Follow the guidance on page 15 of the solicitation to ensure you are providing the required information. Also, keep in mind that this section counts towards the page limit. You want to be sure that you're being responsive to the questions in this section while at the same time ensuring you have enough pages remaining to provide detailed information on the proposed project. I have seen applications where the applicant used more pages to describe the need for the project than the number of pages to describe the project activities to address the problem. Strong applications strike a balance between justifying the need and providing detailed information on how the need will be addressed. Next is what will be done, which is worth 40 points. This is the section where you will describe what you are going to do with your grant funds. You should provide detailed information that clearly describes the activities and strategies to support your proposed project. The goals and objectives should be clear and detailed so that reviewers understand how the proposed activities will meet the needs identified and the program requirements. For example, there is a difference between stating, "We will conduct trainings for teachers," and "We will conduct annual training for all teachers on how to identify and refer students who have been victims of dating violence." Additionally, it is important to note there are different requirements for the different purpose areas, so please be sure to follow the guidance provided on pages 15 to 16 of the solicitation to ensure you are being responsive to what is being asked. Some common mistakes to avoid in this section are not providing a description of products to develop or purchase with grant funds. If products such as brochures, videos, billboards, or curriculums are mentioned in this section, there should be a line item included in the budget and vice versa. Not describing how products and services will be tailored to meet the needs of a specific population to be served. For example, the ages, developmental stages, culturally and population specific, and the different audiences for the training and education. Not including activities and strategies that will be developed and implemented to meet the OVW priority areas that the applicant has chosen to address and identified on the data requested with application survey. And not addressing each of the program and purpose area requirements. The last part of the proposal narrative is the who will implement, which is worth 10 points. In this section, the applicant should identify whom the key individuals and organizations will be that are involved in the proposed project. This section must demonstrate that the individuals and organizations identified have the capacity to address the stated need and can successfully implement the proposed project activities. As a friendly reminder, this section is also part of the page limit. You'll want to keep this section focused on who is involved in the major project activities and who is most responsible for ensuring the goals and objectives of the proposed project are met. You can refer to page 16 to ensure you include all the required information for this section. During the peer review process, the peer review panels will be reviewing and scoring the budgets to ensure that they meet the program requirements and do not include any unallowable activities and/or expenses. It is the applicant's responsibility to read this section thoroughly in order to submit a proper budget. Pages 17 through 19 provide detailed information on how to develop and submit your budget for your proposed project. The budget detail worksheet and narrative is worth 20 points. Please note that there is a new process for submitting budgets this year. Applicants will complete a web-based form in GIST grants for the budget worksheet and budget narrative. Now let's go over some of the budget requirements specific to the CY program. All applicants, regardless of purpose area, must include funds specifically for OVW mandated technical assistance and travel costs. The CY program has a dedicated team of technical assistance providers specifically for the purpose of providing comprehensive technical assistance and training to CY grantees. All CY grantees are required to attend and participate in the technical assistance events. Projects located in the lower US must allocate $30,000, and projects located in the US territories, Hawaii, or Alaska must allocate $35,000. When in-person TA events resume, applicants should plan to send at least 4 individuals involved in the project to 3 OVW mandated technical assistance training events each year of the award, for a total of 9 training events throughout the award period. In addition to the training events, grantees are required to send a minimum of 3 individuals to the new grantee orientation. This funding may not be used for any other travel and/or training activities, and any remaining funds in this section will be returned to OVW at the end of the award period. If applicants are interested in attending conferences or other trainings to increase their team's skills and knowledge, or reimburse for local travel, additional funding outside of the $30,000 or $35,000 should be set aside for those specific purposes. The budget also includes funds to ensure project activities and materials are accessible to individuals with disabilities. For example, videos can be closed captioned and translated into other languages. Written materials can be translated into different languages. Interpreters can be made available at events or in the process of providing direct victim services for those who are deaf, hard of hearing, or speak a language other than English. Next, the budget should include funds to compensate all project partners for their contribution to the project, including attendance at the CY technical assistance events. The exception to this is if a project partner is a state, local, tribal, or territorial agency, and the activities they would be responsible for in the project are within their regular scope of work. An example of this would be a victim witness liaison in the prosecutor's office who is responsible for accompanying a victim to a court proceeding. Because this is within the normal scope of work of the victim witness liaison and the prosecutor's office, this grant could not compensate them for that activity. However, you could designate grant funds to compensate them for mileage to and from the coordinated community response meetings, travel costs associated with attending the OVW mandated TA trainings and events, and participating in after-hour community events. Next, I want to highlight spending limits on certain activities. They are no more than 10% of the total funding may be designated for supplemental support services such as childcare, transportation assistance, clothing, or hygiene products. And no more than 10% of the total funding may be used for media buys such as billboards, radio, TV, public service announcements, or bus subway advertisements. In some circumstances, the budget is reviewed independently of the full application. Therefore, it is important that the budget narrative be as comprehensive as possible and describe in detail each line item in the budget. A strong budget and budget narrative should provide enough information to understand the proposed project without having to refer back to the project narrative. More information on the budget will be provided at the end of this presentation. The next section is the Memorandum of Understanding, which is worth 20 points. Pages 19 to 20 provide detailed information on what is required to be included in the MOU. I encourage you to review the solicitation carefully when creating your MOU to ensure you are meeting all of the requirements. In the past, I have seen applications miss the cutoff score by just a point because information was missing from the MOU. I've also seen applications be removed from the review process because they submitted a letter of support instead of the required MOU. As with previous sections, I'm not going to go over everything that must be included in the MOU. Instead, I'm going to provide you with some examples of common mistakes and some helpful hints. Common mistakes that result in point deductions are submitting multiple MOUs. The MOU for this program should be one document. You can have multiple signature pages so long as all of the names and titles of everyone signing the MOU are included on each signature page. But each of your partners should not have their own MOU. It should be one MOU with all of the partners for the whole project. Another common mistake is not addressing each of the requirements in the MOU. Like the budget, the MOU may be reviewed separately from the full application, so it is important to include all of the requested information, even if you have addressed it elsewhere in the application. Another common mistake is missing signatures, especially the signatures of the required partners. Every person and/or organization that is listed in the MOU must sign the MOU. In addition, all required partners for each of the purpose areas or the priority areas must be signatories on the MOU. And then one of the last common mistakes that I see is submitting an outdated or irrelevant MOU. The MOU must be current and it must be responsive to the solicitation requirements and include only those activities that are listed in the proposal narrative. For this program, the MOU is most often a new document that the applicant will draft with their proposed project partners specifically for the project that they are submitting for. OVW does not fund activities that jeopardize victim safety, deter or prevent physical or emotional healing for victims, or allow offenders to escape responsibility for their actions. The Solicitation Companion Guide contains a list of these activities. You can find the Solicitation Companion Guide on the OVW website under Resources for Applicants. I'm not going to review the list verbatim. Instead, to assist you with submitting a strong application, I'm going to go over some of the ones that have caused past applicants to receive point deductions during peer review. So one of the activities that could compromise victim safety and recovery are procedures or policies that fail to include safety planning with victims. It's not enough to say that you will provide safety planning for victims. A strong application will provide details of how safety planning is incorporated into the procedures and policies, how safety planning is conducted with victims, and what is discussed during the safety planning process, and the purpose of the safety planning. Another common mistake that we see is project designs and budgets that fail to account for the access needs of individuals with disabilities, with limited English proficiency, or who are deaf or hard of hearing. Peer reviewers usually deduct points off of the budget and the budget narrative for applications that do not designate funding for how the applicants will make their services and or products accessible to individuals with disabilities. Please give this serious consideration when completing your application. If you will not need to allocate funds to address this requirement because there is another organization or program in your community that provides this service, it is important for you to state that in the project narrative, as well as in the budget and budget narrative. And another common mistake that we see is failing to mention that you already have or will be developing policies regarding confidentiality, parental involvement consent, mandatory reporting, information sharing, and background checks. This is another one that peer reviewers routinely deduct points for during the peer review process. Having these policies in place not only protects the safety of the victim, but also enhances the working relationship between service providers. So do not assume that peer reviewers know that these policies exist because you are a victim service provider. They are looking for proof that they do exist or will be developed, and the only way for them to know this is if they read it in your project narrative. Next, we're going to go over out-of-scope activities and unallowable activities. OVW and the CY program have specific out-of-scope activities that cannot be supported with grant funds. To assist with submitting a strong application, I'm going to touch on some of the ones that have caused past applicants to receive point deductions during the peer review process. Please review the full list of out-of-scope activities on page 6 of the solicitation prior to writing your application to ensure you do not include any of the listed activities in your project. The first one I want to highlight is number 5, perpetrator services. Grant funds may not be used to provide support services for perpetrators of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or sex trafficking, such as short or long-term counseling, batterer intervention, or anger management. The next is number 6, sexual harassment, bullying, and hazing. Grant funds may not be used to develop or provide training, products, or policies that focus primarily on sexual harassment, bullying, or hazing. OVW recognizes these issues are serious and can be traumatic experiences for children and youth. OVW also understands the intersection of the VAWA crimes and sexual harassment, bullying, and hazing. However, OVW grant funds must be used to primarily address the crimes listed in the Violence Against Women Act, which are domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, and sex trafficking. To avoid possible point deductions, applicants should refrain from including activities and/or strategies to address sexual harassment, bullying, and hazing without addressing the intersection to the VAWA crimes. Next is number 8, which is ceremonies, celebrations, and entertainment. Grant funds may not be used to support award ceremonies or other celebratory events or the purchase of tickets for entertainment activities, such as sporting events, movies, concerts, or museums. The next is number 9, athletics. Grant funds may not be used to support an individual or group of individuals' participation on athletic teams or events, including the full-time salaries for individuals who serve as coaches or leaders of athletic teams. Grant funds may be used to support a portion of a coach's salary specific to the time spent on project activities. For example, coaches may receive training to prevent sexual assault or dating violence on the team or by team members. This could be supported with grant funds. Another example is a coach may provide prevention education to the team members. The time spent delivering this education to the team members could be supported with grant funds. Grant funds may not be used to support an individual's participation on an athletic team or event. Grant funds may not be used to buy uniforms or pay for transportation to and from games. However, grant funds may be used to transport a team to a prevention education training. The next is number 10, technical assistance. Grant funds may not be used for the provision of technical assistance to other entities. This includes project partners. The distinction here is that the CY program requires grantees to engage in cross-training activities where the grantee, project partners, and member organizations of the larger coordinated community response are providing training to one another. It is best to refrain from using the term technical assistance when referencing this training in the project narrative and budget, and instead refer to it as training or education. The next is number 12, the service area. Grant funds may not be used to conduct or support regional or statewide activities or projects. Applicants must ensure that proposed projects support local community-specific strategies only. In the past, there have been applications removed for further review because the proposed project was a statewide or multi-state initiative. To avoid having this happen to your application, please ensure your project is focused to a specific community. Some examples of activities that are not community-based and could result in point deductions include national or statewide podcasts, organizing or presenting at regional, statewide, or national conferences, and educational or awareness campaigns that have been developed for regional, state, or national distribution. In addition, the applicant and its project partners must be based in the project service area. Next, I'm going to go over some tips that may improve your chances on becoming a CY grant recipient. Please note, the following list is not a guarantee your project will be funded, but is intended to assist you with submitting a strong and responsive application. Think of your application like a blueprint, a complete plan that explains how to do or develop something. Before a contractor can break ground on a new project, they must submit their blueprint to the local officials for review and approval. Your application is very similar to this in that it contains all of the elements necessary to successfully receive permission, otherwise known as funding, to begin the project, as well as the steps necessary to successfully execute and complete your project. So be as detailed and succinct as possible when writing your application. Next, be sure to read the solicitation. I have not reviewed every section of the solicitation, so please read it in its entirety. As I've mentioned previously, it is the applicant's responsibility to read the solicitation. Everything that needs to be included in or with your application is mentioned in the solicitation, including resources that are linked or referenced in the solicitation. For an application to be considered complete and move to the review process, it must include the following 3 elements: a proposal narrative, a budget worksheet and narrative, and a memorandum of understanding. MOUs that do not contain signatures may receive point deductions or be removed from consideration. Be sure your project strategies and activities address the purpose area and priority area, if applicable, identified on the data requested with application survey. It is perfectly okay for projects to focus on one crime or age group. It does not increase your chances of being awarded a grant by stating you will address every crime if your proposal narrative only provides information on how you will address sexual assault. If you are submitting a continuation application, be sure that your proposed project is building upon what you have accomplished with the last award. A continuation project should not simply be a continuation of the same project without expanding the activities or focus of the proposed project. You must be able to demonstrate growth and expansion or be able to articulate well the reason or reasons why you are proposing the same activities. Use the application checklist on page 30 of the solicitation. This checklist will help ensure all required documents are included in your application when you begin the submission process. Page 20 of the solicitation includes information on all of the additional required documents that must be submitted with your application. Should you be funded, failure to submit this additional information does cause delays in final approval of your project and budget. Allow plenty of time to gather required information, especially the signatures on the MOU. Remember, the MOU can have multiple signature pages so long as every individual that will be signing the MOU is listed on each signature page. This usually speeds the process as you are not having to wait for one signature before acquiring the next. To avoid any possibility of missing the submission deadline, submit your application as far in advance of the deadline as possible. Technical issues may arise, and the number of individuals seeking assistance from Just Grants or grants.gov increases on and near the submission date. Also, with Just Grants being a new system for everyone, there is a learning curve, so the more time you allow for the submission of your application, the better. Make the application easy to read and follow for all of the reviewers. Use the heading and subheading titles that are in the solicitation for each section. Be sure the application and responses to the program requirements and expectations are complete and clearly written. Avoid the use of acronyms. Remember, the reviewers are not familiar with your community and will not be familiar with the acronyms your organization and project partners may use. Print out the application before submitting it to ensure appropriate formatting and adherence to page limit requirements. Also, number your pages in the application. If your name and contact information is listed as the point of contact, please monitor your inbox, including your spam folder. There are times that the system may reject your application, and you will need to make sure you are getting those alerts. Begin the registration process for your DUNS number, registering with grants.gov and Just Grants today. Don't delay. Next, I'm going to go over some of the technical challenges and late submission processes. Pages 22 and 23 contain important information related to technical challenges and late submission requests. As I mentioned at the beginning of this session, the process for submitting an application involves multiple steps and multiple systems. I cannot stress strong enough the importance of allowing yourself significant time to register, prepare, and submit your application. Applicants experiencing technical issues with grants.gov or Just Grant should contact the OVW Just Grant support line as soon as possible at ovw.justgrantsupport@usdoj.gov. Applicants who experience technical issues with Just Grant should contact the OVW Just Grant support immediately and continue to develop their proposals while they are working to resolve any issues. This will enable applicants to submit a full proposal by the deadline using an alternate method if necessary. In the next couple of slides, we're going to focus on aspects of your application that relate to the documents our financial team, the Grants Financial Management Division, otherwise known as GFMD, reviews. More specifically, we'll discuss some items GFMD has identified from prior year applications that can help with expediting their review process. As with other sections of the solicitation, I'm going to highlight certain aspects of the pre-award risk assessment and provide you with a link to a detailed webinar on how to develop the budget that will be included in your application. First, we'll highlight the items identified in the data requested with application survey, also known as the DRA, which is completed by all applicants in Just Grants. A list of questions included in the DRA appears at the end of the solicitation under the heading Survey Questions. Applicants should click on the survey name, pre-award risk assessment to access and complete the surveys in Just Grants. Specifically, two items that GFMD would like for me to discuss with you are the single audit response and the IRS three-step safe harbor procedure, both questions on the DRA survey. OVW requires all applicants provide a statement as to whether they have expended $750,000 or more in federal funds during their last fiscal year. If they have, then they indicate that and also specify the end date of their last fiscal year. However, GFMD is finding that applicants do not always include all of this information. Please ensure this question is answered in its entirety on the DA survey, which is question number 3. The next item to highlight from the solicitation is specifically for nonprofit organizations. If the applicant is a nonprofit and you use the IRS three-step safe harbor procedure to determine your executive's compensation, you are required to provide a disclosure letter. Page 18 of the solicitation provides the details and a link to a sample letter. Note that there are 4 required parts of this disclosure letter. The sample letter provided outlines all 4 parts of the disclosure, so please be sure to follow the sample and provide a response to each of the 4 parts. The next item is the pre-award risk assessment survey, which assists GFMD during the pre-award risk assessment review for all applications. Each applicant must prepare a response to all 11 questions, and each question has multiple parts. GFMD has noticed from prior years that applicants do not always fully answer all parts of the questions, which in turn requires GFMD to reach out to the applicant and may delay funding decisions. Some of the most common issues encountered have been, for example, question number 2, where the applicant indicates that they do indeed have internal policies, but they don't provide a brief list of topics covered in the policies and procedures. On question number 3, some applicants fail to provide a brief summary of the organization's process for tracking expenditures, and more specifically, whether or not it tracks budgeted versus actual expenditures. These are just a few examples, but in general, please make sure you read each piece of each question and provide a full and comprehensive response. The next slide highlights some of the many resources that are available to assist applicants with completing and submitting an application. These resources should be used as you are creating the budget to be submitted with your application. GFMD has developed a detailed webinar to assist applicants in developing the budget for their OVW grant applications. This webinar provides some insight as to what OVW financial staff considers during their review of your budget. You can follow the link that's on the slide or in the transcript of this session. The webinar can be found under the budget information section on this page. Next up is the uniform guidance, which can be found at 2 CFR 200. Another excellent resource is the DOJ financial guide, as well as the budget section of the CY solicitation. If you need assistance finding these resources, please contact the GFMD help desk. So with that, we are finally at the end of this presentation. We know this is a lot of information to process. If you have questions related to the solicitation that were not addressed in this session, please reach out to one of the following. Questions regarding the CY program should be directed to the CYEM unit. This includes mandatory requirements, OVW priority areas, allowable activities, and late submission requests. The email address is ovw.consulyouth@usdoj.gov. Questions about the information provided by GFMD. This includes the pre-award risk assessment, budget format, and required financial related documents. GFMD can be reached at 888-514-8556 or by email at ovw.gfmd@usdoj.gov. Questions related to technical issues with grants.gov and just grants should be directed to, for grants.gov, 800-518-4726 or support@grant.gov. For just grants, you can call them at 655-4482 or reach them via email at ovw.justgrantsupport@usdoj.gov. Please note that OVW staff cannot comment on the quality of an applicant's proposed project or proposed activities. Thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for your interest in the OVW Children and Youth Program.